Hey guys, it's WaifuGate here. So today we're going to be doing another weekly meta deck analysis. This is where I take an MTG Goldfish, 5-0 list, a couple of those. Maybe they didn't quite go 5-0, but they performed well enough to get on the radar and they looked interesting. So I usually try to take those decks into consideration before the ones that are 5-0 that we've sort of already covered before or covered recently. And we just kind of go into them like, what do they have main deck? What are they teched for? What do they have their sideboard? What's it look like? What do they do with it? That type of stuff. And we kind of analyze it, like maybe what I would change about the list, how the list might evolve with the meta depending on what happens, etc. So that's what we do in these videos. So if you guys are interested in that, I do it each week. Usually the video comes up on Friday, but if there's a deck guide that needs to be pushed up, sometimes I'll push it back a little. So there's that. And there's also going to be a free MTGA code in the video. There are more details on that in the comments below, but basically it's for an individual card reward. If someone else grabs it, it's a one-time use thing. So first come, first serve on that. But every video has one, and I do a new video each and every day. So if you guys are interested in that, it's not your only chance to get one. Is what I'm trying to say. Anyways, that'll pretty much be it for the introduction. So there you go. So let's get into the list. So we've got Azorius Control, Sultai Ramp, and Mono Black from the latest Standard League here. So this looks like pretty standard U-White control. We've seen a few lists like this with Yorion. Now, the downside of these lists that I don't like are the primary downside is that Yorion requires your starting deck to contain at least 20 more cards than the minimum deck size. So why I don't like this, it's a double-edged sword. I like it because you don't have to make as many cuts in the main board. Like you can just have more cards in your deck giving you more options so you have more answers. The downside is that you might not see those answers in time. So for example, this deck only has 3 Shatter the Skies. In an 80 card pile, you're way less likely to draw that compared to a 60 card deck. On top of that, your sideboard it has 1 less card to start with because this requires a sideboard slot, right? Like this has to take 1 of your spots up. And then the other downside of that is that, like, let's say you put in your 2 Grafdigger's Cages for a matchup. If you need to see this card, what are the chances of you seeing it if you only have 2 copies in an 80 card deck, right? Compared to 2 copies in a 60 card deck, what are your chances? It's way less likely that you see your sideboard cards. Like 2 Baneslayers, if you really need this against aggro, what are the chances that you're going to see it? Compared to if you have a 60 card list. Same thing with the Shatter the Sky. Like for 1, you're only running 3 main deck, and you're only bringing 1 extra one in. Like what are the chances that you get to see that? Are your Glass Caskets, do you get to see those? Is Aether Gust going to be enough to stave off aggro? Like, it's just really tough with these Yorion piles. So that's my deal with the Yorion piles overall. I feel like if you're catering to aggro or something else, like if you want to win against aggro, you need 6 copies of a board wipe. Not the same board wipe because that's cheating, obviously, but 4 Shatters, 2 time wipes or something, or 4 Shatters, 2 extinction events if you're an Esper. This is Azorius, so that example isn't good. Azorius is U-White. So there's some considerations, but I like having more board wipes in order to maximize my chances. Or if I'm doing 3 here, I want 3 board wipes in the sideboard if I want to beat aggro. Or you can lean on stuff like, Omen of the Suns, Birth giving you a wall to block with, Casket being able to exile some early game creatures. There are other ways of combating the 80 card pile, but it's just tough when you're running 34 lands and you can't cut the Births against control because you need your land drops against the control matchup as well. And if this is just to guarantee a land drop, this could also just be another land potentially. It's a really tough thing to juggle in regards to, you know, how many copies of a card do I need to be consistent? Do I have enough do I have enough draw power to see my win cons, etc.? Like there's a lot to consider in Yorion. So that's getting into the Yorion thing. That's like a lot of focus on just the companion. Let's try to break down the deck and what its sideboard is trying to accomplish here, on top of how the main deck tries to win. So this seems to be a control deck that's primarily tap out control. And what I mean by that is it just taps out for threats once it has things like it'll slam Elspeth Conquers Death as soon as there's a good target. It will board wipe. It will, you know, tap out a lot of the time in order to produce threats. Like Yorion, for example, after they produce enchantments that they want to flash in for value, they have one companion and then they have two in their main deck, so they have more chances to replicate this effect of exiling everything, it coming back into play and getting a lot of value, which is very, very good, but is a little clunky at times if they can't like hit enough land drops, if they don't have enough permanents to gain value off of it, etc. It's a little tough sometimes. So like Yorion can blink Narset. This is a -2. They can do this twice before this becomes a 1 loyalty. If they flash that in, they get 2 more uses off of Narset, which is kind of nice. Same thing for the Teferi. You can exile him and make it so he can bounce something else to draw another card if you need to. Or if he's just super lit, like creatures have been attacking him here and there, you can exile him and refresh his loyalty. And then block with the Yorion to make it unfavorable for your opponent to swing at the Teferi, stuff like that. Same thing with this Teferi. If it needs to -3 to phase to protect itself, you can Yorion, and there's just a lot of value to be had with this. That's why they're running 2 copies main deck. I don't really agree with the Aether Gus. Like, the meta is shifting to where this card is okay. The reason why it's kind of okay in this list is because you have some sack outlets for it. Like, you can, for example, if your opponent's not showing red or green cards, you can Omen of the Sea, scry, and put this on bottom, draw other cards instead. Or if you happen to get stuck with one in your hand, you can +1 the Teferi, which lets you draw and then discard a card. So you can discard the extra copy, or the copy of the worthless counterspell, basically. And then they've got 3 vetoes, which are good for, you know, opposing Teferis if that happens to line up. It's good for Nissa, who shakes, which is a very good win con at the moment. It shuts off a lot of that power, and it's good for opposing Elspeth Conquers Death. All right, so like lots of good answers. I like the Tails End, especially if you're going to be in the Yorion mirror. You can Tails End the Yorion, or you can Tails End the effect of Yorion, which is returning all the permanents. You can do Tails End specifically on that part of the effect, that stack, and then your opponent will not get their permanents coming back into play, and they'll stay in exile, so they lose a lot of value there, which is awesome. That can definitely turn the tide of the fight instantly. Now, personally, I don't like Thassa's intervention in decks that don't ramp too much, because the X is oftentimes like, this can sometimes just be better as a negate, or you know, as an extra Omen of the Sea. Like, I feel like this card shines more in ramp because you're able to dig further or get to 4 mana in order to hold this up better. In blue-white, it can help dig you out of a land pile, though, or to fetch 2 lands for you, too. Drawn from Dreams? Yeah, Drawn from Dreams, that's a good point, Strider. Like, Drawn is a good card to dig with as well, in comparison to something like Thassa's. The downside is Drawn from Dreams can't counter something, but if you're in more of the tap out control atmosphere, like that type of a deck, then Drawn is definitely the better card, especially if you can +1 Teferi and just cast it on your opponent's turn as well. You just get to dig harder, and that's awesome. I hate the one of Dispute. I feel like this is just trash. Some people enjoy it, but I would just rather run, especially in a list with 80 cards, just a card that has value throughout the whole game. This is absolutely garbage, like late game against aggro or whatever, game 1. Like, I just hate this. I feel like Dispute should be like a 3 or none of in the main deck. The 1 of just doesn't make sense. Maybe that's my personal preference. Maybe I haven't put a lot of time into thinking about it. But for me, this is just a trash pick. This gets 2 thumbs down from me. Hate it. Dislike it. Definitely I would make a second YouTube account and put another thumbs down just so I could give it 2 thumbs down. This idea, I just don't like it. And it's mainly because like there's no guaranteed value in it. Like I would rather run 2 Tails End, for example. I think that's just better than running the Dispute, because Tails End for 1 more mana counters Teferi at any point in the game, especially since you have Brazen Borrowers. That's even more more relevant. You know, you can bounce the Teferi on your own turn and then veto it on the way back down unless they have a counter spell for your Brazen, which is whatever. Like, it's just nice, you know? So that being said, like, let's look at the rest of the list. This is the only, these things are a little for me. So we've got Caskets for aggro, makes sense. It can exile Uro and reset them. Even if they bounce the Casket with Teferi, it's still good value. It still stalls really hard. 3 Omens, 3 Births, 2 Omen of the Sun. So lots of draw value, lots of value off of Yorion, especially with these. I feel like Omen is a no-brainer at 4. Like, you could probably drop the Dispute or a Thassa's for that. I think that's just better. This is nice life gain. Plain U White does struggle with life gain for the most part. It's very hard to get that wrapped up unless you're like Strider Stone and you main deck Heliod's Intervention, you know, to gain life on all of your lists. But the 5 cards in an 80 card deck and they only gain you 2 life apiece is not a lot. So it's a little rough for me to not like to want more against aggro. I'd want more against aggro, but if you're fighting different types of lists, this setup kind of makes sense. Like the Gus versus Reclamation, super awesome, etc. It's just kind of nice. So here we've got Elspeth Conquers Death as a 3 of, makes sense, and Shark Typhoon is awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of Shrine decks that make sense, yeah, for Heliod's. So your win cons are Shark Typhoon, basically. Shark Typhoon and Brazen Borrowers and Yorions. So, and we've got 2 Blast Zones. It looks pretty okay. I personally don't like Blast Zone that much. I'd probably drop one of these so I could shatter the sky more, but personal preference. Oh, date night, nice, Strider, there you go. Tell her I said hi, alright? When I messaged that on Discord for you, I was just chilling out in my room with my roommate, and I was just we were just laughing about it. It was super funny because we wanted like one more person to play GTFO with. Like, Strider, get on. So you'll take a picture. All right. What's up? I said hi. All right. Hopefully that was good. It's also part of the YouTube video for no reason. So there we go. So let's get into the sideboard. But yeah, I prefer more Triomes for Cycle Lands over Blast Zone and some of this other stuff, but I think that's just personal preference. I like this part, this 6 and the 9 there. That's good. Seen that a lot. And then we've got Grafdigger's Cage, Sailor, 1 extra Casket. Here I'd almost like to see another board wipe, like a time wipe or 2, just to get consistency if aggro's a problem, but I guess they just have Baneslayer in place of that. So they can try to fight the board a little bit more instead. Commence, I don't like it as a card. I feel like even though it's unlikely that you get it, I would probably run like a Narset's Reversal on the side just for the meme in the case like a Sultai Rampless goes Thought Distortion on you. The power that you feel from that is unlike anything else, I would say. I did it once in Esper, Sultai versus Esper, and it was great. I enjoyed it a lot. It was a good time. I think I might have actually been playing a different type of deck, but I had Narset's Reversal against the Esper list because I ramped. That was pretty fun. So yeah, overall this deck looks a little soft against aggro, but other than that, it looks pretty okay. I can understand why it went 5-0 if it's just like Tamir Reclamation and you can just veto their win con every time, etc. It's not too terrible. And they struggle a little bit winning with Shark Typhoon when you have so many Brazen Borrowers. I would say Bant Ramp would be very, very tough if you can't protect your Narsets. Having 4 Narsets definitely helps you in that matchup, but like they have ECDs and stuff too, man. It's going to be a long fight. All right, Sultai Ramp, 1 Chadwick, 4 Crassus. 4 Crassus was not enough for this human. It was not enough for random drooler. Lots of 4-ubs we see. They prefer Heartless Act over Eliminate, which I think is pretty legit because this can kill Questing Beast, and that's what you generally lose to, I think. 4 Soots instead of Extinction Events, which is a pretty interesting choice, especially when you're running Uros and Gadwick and Crassus. Whereas like Extinction Event, you can potentially save your creatures. 1 Shark Typhoon, 28 lands is pretty legit, like I understand that. 2 extra board wipes in the side. 4 Disputes, man after my own heart, or woman, maybe. So that's kind of cool. I just like 4 and 3-ubs. I hate the 2-ub Dispute that Croquis does, and a couple other people do it in deck construction. Like, I just don't understand it. Which I can maybe have a conversation about that. And hopefully it doesn't lead to, well, it just feels right, because I hate that. But reasoning, like, for me is just consistency. I like knowing that I have a good chance of drawing the card in my opening hand or drawing it in the top 10 after the mulligan. So that's nice. They've got the other 3 Shark Typhoons in the sideboard. 2 Spyglass is pretty interesting. I'm not sure why. I'm interested to... Like, I guess you could stop Teferi 3-head, but you kind of want him off the field so you can just go hard. So I don't know. I guess it can stop a couple things that are really annoying, but... And there's no Casualties of War in this list, so this is a super proactive list. Like, the only reactive things are the Wilt, the Heartless Act, and the Soot. And this can even be proactive because you can draw a card with it and try to get into some board wipes or whatever you need, you know? Try to find a Crassus with Wilt, etc. So that's kind of nice. So yeah, that's what we got. So pretty interesting. I like that it doesn't have casualties. And the Gust can always protect your Nissa. Like, you can go 2 mana, put Nissa on top in response to a Murderous Rider or whatever. Or in response to an ECD, as long as they don't have Teferi, and that's kind of nice. I would say this deck looks really soft versus Teferi 3. Is what I would say. Because, like, then you can't Gust your Nissa in response, and Gust is pretty dead to Bant Ramp, so... I mean, I guess Gust is good for their Nissa as well. Like, you can reset their Nissa potentially, which is nice. So it's never really dead, I guess, even with a Teferi up. So I retract that point. But I'd like to be... I don't know about this. This seems weird to me. This makes sense because Nissa. This makes sense because Reclamation and Cat Oven and such. This makes sense because of aggro. This makes sense because of Teferi 3. So I like this list, though. It's very proactive. Compared to like no casualties. I like that about it. All right, last one, mono black aggro. There's a dude named Adamant MTG who runs mono black aggro. He's been on the list for a while now, and he's been enjoying it. So I'm curious to see how this shapes up. Maybe compare it to his list later. So we've got 4 Stone Coil Steve Austins, pretty awesome. 4 Gutter Bones, Knights. So lots of 4-ubs and then a 3 of Rankle. Did I get your deck list? I don't think so. Yeah, I see it. I see it. Yep. Yeah, I can click on it. Yep. Nice. I saw your response too, or her response, I should say. That's funny. So we've got Rotting Regisars. We've got 3 Rankles, lots of flyers. So looks like it's trying to get a lot of damage in on the ground. Some dodgy creatures like Teferi. This dodges Teferi, this dodges like any multicolored creatures that try to block it, so it has a lot of evasion. Snake here. So you try to get a lot of damage in through the ground. A lot of your creatures have a lot of value too, like this guy can just take over the game if it goes unanswered, like if there's no casket on this guy. It's nice. And then you've got Black Lance for, at the end of your turn, make a 3/2. Kind of helps you against board wipes because you don't commit full tilt to it right off the start. And then you've got Rotting Regisar, which just ends the game pretty fast, too. Like 7/6 for 3 is pretty busted. 3 eliminates, so this can deal with planeswalkers or smaller creatures just to blow holes in the defenses. Yeah, I can look at your historic list. Link it in chat, Sobek. I want one other list after yours, at least. And we'll do that review the same way that we're doing this review. We do it for viewers as well, for viewer lists. So I'll pop that open and we'll check it out in a minute. And then we've got 4 demonic embraces, which are enchanted creatures, gets +3/+1, has flying, and is a demon. You may cast it from your graveyard by paying 3 life and discarding a card, in addition to paying for its other costs. So this can give Rotting Regisar wings, which is just terrifying because that's like 10 damage out of nowhere. And if I was expecting to like chump with an Omen of the Sun or something, it's very tough, or whatever the case may be. Like just chumping it on the ground, basically, it forces me to have another answer. It also gives something like Spawn of Mayhem. While it doesn't have, it already has flying, so it doesn't gain anything from that. It does gain trample. Like it gets +3/+1, and it has trample, so that can be very devastating in the air as well. This list is really, really aggressive. Looks to get through some damage on the ground and then give something wings. Maybe this, for example, and then pump it, and that does a lot of damage or whatever. Like it's very, very nice. Like it tries to get as much damage as it can on the ground, then evasion, whether that's through Rankle, Flying Regisar, or Spawn or something. So it's very nice, very fast. This is set up for control to grab like Shatter the Sky. One of probably for Uro, because that life gain's super annoying. Against Sakdos, etc. Like just something to kind of mess with them a little bit, I would say, which is nice. And then we've got Grasp of Darkness, Heartless Axe, Grasps. This makes a lot of sense since Nissa is so strong. And then 1 Heartless Act. So Disfigure, so they're worried about like other aggro decks maybe getting in under them, like mono red, like having early answers to Steamkin here. Grasp of Darkness hits Questing Beast, which is nice, as long as it's not Ember Cleaved for 2 mana, which is pretty cool. This also gets rid of indestructible creatures, like the silly Pawblade deck. This dodges that, which is super important. And they even have 2 more in the sideboard, so they're primarily like, okay, against control I go 4 Duress, 1 Soul Guide, maybe an Eliminate if I care about anything, like Teferi or whatever. They probably don't, though. But it might be good for like Shark Typhoon tokens, etc. Stuff that the opponent wants to chump with. Very important for like, you know, if they're wanting to Demonic Embrace their Regisar to get a lot of damage in, being able to disfigure or eliminate the token is pretty cool. Pretty good. So I'd say that this looks pretty solid and pretty fast. Like if you're just looking for fast games, this looks like a pretty good deck. And yeah, I like it. I don't know if I'd change much because I'm not like very proficient with aggro. I'd have to do a lot of thinking and look at the meta lists and such before I made a decision, but it looks really solid from the looks of it. So yeah, there we go. So hopefully that helps you catch up with the meta a little bit this week. We're probably going to see some more shifts with that as well, just here and there. Like people come up with new lists, or new lists become more popular, they get countered, and that's what this series is sort of about, is trying to keep up with that and maybe kind of show off some more interesting lists as well as cover some of the meta ones and how they kind of interact with each other. So I do this each week. So there'll be a subscribe button at the end with the end panels, as well as like, you know, a new video if you want to check that out. And then if you have any questions or comments, drop them in the comments below. And if you want to, I also stream too. So if you want to talk on stream rather than, you know, type out a comment, then that's also good. I've usually streamed 2 p.m. CST, Central Standard Time, until 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. So thanks again for checking out the video, and I'll see you guys soon.